Welcome back, students. Today we're going to focus solely on the Pistons unit. Let's get started. Before we get into the good stuff, there are a few mechanics with pistons that you should probably know. First up is basically double piston extenders. Now this is one of the simpler designs. Basically what it does is it pushes a piston and a block, and then that piston pushes the block out in order to move the block 2 spaces instead of 1. So if we move that here and we move this, it moved 1, 2 blocks. And then now this has to turn off before that. So if you turn this off, we know that pistons, when they're extended, cannot be moved. So this needs to retract and this can pull back. This is especially useful in piston doors. Next we move on to a very interesting concept, which is Quasi Connectivity. Quasi Connectivity affects dispensers, droppers, and pistons. What it does is a piston will activate without being directly powered. Kind of weird. But is required to be updated somehow, like what observers are detecting, block updates and stuff. A block update has to happen next to a piston, which updates the piston. This allows them to be activated by anything that would activate the space above them. So like if we had a lamp here, this would activate the lamp. But because of quasi-connectivity, we can have this activate this piston. Very strange. So right now it does nothing because it does not know it's being powered until we update it. And then unpower it. It still doesn't know that it's not powered until we update it. There's one more weird thing. A sticky piston and a redstone block. They don't work very well together, especially if it's pushing it upwards. Because due to quasi-connectivity, if I activate this, it will go up and stay up forever. Unless I get rid of this block. Because what it's doing is this is powering, it's just like this lever. It's powering that space here. It's powering this space here, which because of quasi-connectivity, the piston below it will activate when updated, and it's being updated when it extends. Very weird stuff. We will discuss quasi-connectivity in a further episode, but the reason I wanted to show you it is because it is used in some piston doors. So first we start with 2x2 doors, which are really the simplest doors that are useful. So right here we have these 2 pistons, and one of them seems like they should not be powered, but because of quasi-connectivity, they are. And they're also updated by this block, which is why it works. So can deactivate it like that, and this is the first way you can make a piston door. You can have it just pistons extending and stay extended, or staying retracted. Second way is we can deliver a 1-tick pulse, making them either spit out the block or retract the block, but not both, like so. And then we also have a vertical door, which uses the same technique as that. So this isn't used as much, but it's there. And then finally we have a flush piston door, which is very interesting because you can hide things with it, which is pretty cool. Because you can have this wall here, and no one would ever know that if you flick some lever, it will open up. And this is the same circuit we saw in the classroom, where it has these pistons push the piston and the block, and then these pistons push that block again. And we accomplish this by powering this block first, then adding a delay to these pistons. Now we move on to the gooey stuff. But first I have a sticky situation. Should I craft slime blocks first or honey blocks first? Well, let's just start with slime blocks since they're added in the game first. So, in order to craft a slime block, you need 9 slime balls. So, all you have to do is fill up the crafting grid. 1 slime block. And then you need 4 honey bottles for a honey block. All you have to do is put them in a 2x2 formation like so, and then you got yourself a honey block and 4 empty bottles. Nice. We are back in the lab to talk about the mechanics of the sticky blocks. First up, pistons still have that push limit, 12 blocks. Can't get around that, can we? So I will demonstrate here 6 slime blocks, 6 regular blocks, and works fine. And the nice thing about honey and slime blocks is the fact that they don't stick to each other, so we can have them next to each other and they won't interfere, which is very useful in, say, ginormous piston doors. So that works fine. That works fine. They're all happy. Now, here we'll demonstrate what happens when there's too many blocks to be pushed. Because you might think, oh, it's on the ground, doesn't matter. Pistons work on the ground. But then you gotta think about it. These blocks are trying to push the entire ground. So when building contraptions with slime blocks and honey blocks, don't build them on the ground. It never works. Unless you take out the ground. Next, we have this double piston extender, which we saw earlier in the flush piston door. Can work with this, except with only 1 piston instead of 2. Works fine. And like before, slime blocks also cannot push extended pistons. Next, we have the redstone block. Now this is a pain when you're trying to push it upward, but slime blocks actually fix that. So with Quasi Connectivity will not have any effect with this. Actually, it might if this is updated. But if you have more slime blocks up there, you'll be fine. And it's a good way to transmit redstone signals upward. So if we were to update this, this is also a block update detector, like an observer. So this has some uses. Next up, some people might be like, hey, I want to make this cool machine that flies. Now, it is possible, but not with 1 piston. Because you might think, hey, I could just have this push itself along. Can't do that. And you're like, okay, look it around. Oh great, now it won't activate. Or I'll have it push itself backwards. Still doesn't work. Here's something that uses Quasi Connectivity to create a clock. All I have to do is activate it, and then it spams it back and forth. Because of Quasi Connectivity and this redstone block. Like I said, redstone blocks and pistons, they do weird things to each other. And then finally, slime blocks cannot get you around the cannot push containers or like obsidian, stuff like that. Can't get you around that rule. As you can tell. One last thing about the slime and honey block is that although they're both transparent blocks, one of them, the slime block, acts like a solid block in the way that redstone can pass right through it. So, for example, power that piston, this will go through the slime block and power that piston, but the honey block, yeah, doesn't work. And it also works for soft powering, at least with the slime block. Can't say the same about the honey. The final concept for this episode is zero-tick pistons. The interesting thing about zero-tick pistons is they fire before the game can have a chance to react. So, right here we have a concrete mover. So what it does is, I put concrete down, I just hold the right click button, and then it just moves concrete super fast. Normally you would use something like this, but it's just not fast enough. Especially when you've got tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of concrete. So, allow me to demonstrate. Yeah, that's pretty fast. The way it's doing that is this redstone is activating this piston, which is doing some quasi connectivity stuff, which is making this piston fire extremely fast, and then once this block is moved, the redstone is unpowered. And then it just repeats. Because redstone dust, powering and unpowering, is instant. And as soon as it unpowers, this retracts instantly. It's kind of weird, and it was weird enough that people were able to make a lot of zero-tick farms where they could get a butt ton of materials and resources in a matter of seconds. Alright, let's review what we've learned today. First, we learned about how pistons push each other and moving blocks more than just one block. So here we have one of the simplest double piston extenders out there, where it activates this first, which does nothing, then activates this piston, and then this activates that piston, like so. Then the reason we have this is so when it comes back, this will power that and retract a block. Then we have this version, which is, if we recall the monostable circuit, where we take a pulse and turn it into a stable signal, well, this is sort of like it, where we take a pulse and then it spits this block out, and the pistons retract, but then if we fire it again, it will retract a block. Both very compact double piston extenders. Now, we also recall Quasi Connectivity, which will be in a future episode. And simply put, all it is piston weirdness. Just remember above the piston. Things that happen above the piston. This block here. Then we have slime and honey blocks, which are sticky blocks that don't let you get around the rules of pistons, but yet they make it so much easier to do some things with pistons. And with the introduction of the honey block, we can have these two things working together without getting all entangled and messed up. Now for extra credit, here I have this contraption that I've built, and it represents what I want you to do. I want you to take not only the circuits from the pistons, but also circuits that we've learned about in the previous episodes, like clocks and all that stuff. So, this is a good demonstration of it. This is actually something you can use to trick your friends, because this is called the floating button, because as you can tell, this block is connected to nothing. Now, there are no hacks, no cheats, no nothing. This works as intended by Mojang. So when I press this button, it opens a door. Now you're like, okay, how'd you do that? And allow me to show you. So if we recall to Quasi Connectivity, we remember how if this block is being powered in some way, so say if we had a redstone lamp right there, and this would power it. But because of Quasi Connectivity, we can also power pistons, but they need to be updated, and that's what this is for. This hopper clock is powering this rail, which is updating the piston constantly. So when I press this button, it updates that piston, and this extends and retracts. And then it runs into a T flip-flop, and then it runs into this double piston extender, flush piston door. So this is a great example of something that I would like you all to build. Excellent class, everyone. I hope you learned a lot about pistons today. I mean, the whole episode was dedicated to pistons, so of course you did. But before I go, one more thing. Remember this door you see in the intro of every video? Well, let's take a quick peek inside. What this is it seems like something very complex and something you would never be able to do. Actually, on the contrary, it's very simple. Due to the addition of honey blocks, we can make these huge piston doors by using none other than flying machines. Now, not going to talk about those now, but we will in a future episode, so look out for that. All this is it's a T flip-flop that runs into a giant flying machine. That's all it is. So, like I said before, these simple contraptions we're learning about can be used to make complex redstone machinery, just like this piston door.